Hi there guys, I thought I'd just do a short video having a look at a couple of the knives that I use. Just talk a bit about them and some of the changes that I've made. I've made a video recently on how to do an ESEE paracord wrap on the sheath, but since then I've made a few changes just to make it a bit more streamlined, and I thought I'd show you the changes that I made. These are the two knives I generally work with in my videos, and obviously when I'm out doing bushcraft or any kind of outdoor activity. I use an ESEE, which is a very large blade, more of a survival knife, but very good for splitting large bits of wood and great for kind of heavy work when you're out kind of chopping wood. I don't generally carry an axe with me, so having a big knife like that really does help give it a bit of diversity in the field. But sometimes it's a little bit too big for intricate work. Maybe I want to do some carving. I want to sit around sort of doing a bit of carving, and I need to make something quite useful for myself, and I need to get in close to the edge. This is why I've sort of bought myself an ESEE 2, which has been a good companion. The two together have really served me well, and there doesn't seem to be too much I can't handle with them both. I mean, I'd be happy with just this, but this is quite a lightweight blade that you can wear around your neck, and it is useful to have a small blade or a secondary blade on you when you're out doing various things. And I really like this knife, and when I bought it I was very impressed with the edge. Very sharp knife, again 1095 carbon steel, so it takes a spark as well. But one thing I have done is made a couple of little changes to it, because I don't think it's perfect right out the box, and this is a change that is also mirrored on the ESEE. And if you look at the back of the knife there, you can see it's black, but that's not the paint that's on the original ESEE. That's actually gun blue. What I've done is I've just ground off the back of the knife, filed a small culvert just above the jimping, hopefully that's in focus, and then blued it to protect it against the elements. And that just means I can put sparks off the back of the blade quite easily. And with that culvert there, I can actually use the fire steel that I've put on the sheath there. Just push that down with your thumb, and you can take some sparks off of it very easily, and it directs them very well, and it gives you a nice amount of sparks. And it's actually a bit of a better combination now to carry a nice little fire steel on the sheath there with this knife, because if I just take this knife with me, and this is the only one I'm out when I'm on a walk or when I'm out doing something, you know, some light work, it's really useful just to have that as a small combination there. But it's a great knife, and I've been really happy with it. And as far as a neck knife goes, it's really useful, and obviously it just hangs around your neck under your jacket, and you can just go for a walk and use it when you need to. But I recently did a video on how to do this paracord wrap and connect a pouch to the ESEE, and I had a Maxpedition barnacle pouch on there, a small little pouch, and I've used that for some time, that setup, but I found it just stuck out a bit too much, and it was a bit too bulky. And you know, at certain times of year when there's plenty of foliage on the trees and leaves, and you've got lots of brush around and you're navigating through it, I found it just clung on, and it got a bit too much really. It was a bit too big. So I've made a few changes to this actual kit here. So first of all, I'll talk about a few changes I've made to the knife. Very similar to the ESEE, in terms of just ground off the paint on the back there, blued it, and put a culvert with a file just above the jimping. And that just allows me again to scrape sparks off of a ferrocerium rod or fire steel, and also to take sparks off the actual 1095 steel itself. But I've also made some changes to the handle just to give me a bit more grip, which I've quite liked actually. Just a bit of customization there, and I think aesthetically it looks quite nice, but at the same time it's quite functional as well, and it gives me a nice bit of grip there. So those are really the only changes I've made to the blade, and as a result I think it's just made it a little bit more functional, a bit more of an all-round blade for me. So those of you who saw the last video, you can probably see the changes already to the actual sheath itself. Instead of the actual barnacle pouch, I've got this utility pouch on there for a multi-tool. But inside I just keep my DC4 sharpening stone, and then wrapped around the side I've got a ferrocerium rod there. Now the ferrocerium rod I used to carry was the Ultimate Strike Force model, and it's really bulky. A lot of plastic wrapped around it, and obviously I appreciate that that's because it has a container on the inside where you can keep some wet light or some tinder, but for me I didn't really need that. So my attraction to it was the 12mm thick ferrocerium rod. So I basically slid that out by loosening up the glue with some heat, put a bit of antler on there, and it just allows me to have a nice thick ferrocerium rod that will last a very long time, I can strike it off the back of my ESEE or my Zula, and it just goes straight in and wraps around there like that onto this DC4, keeps it nice and secure. It just makes for a bit more of a sort of neater setup there. I have made a few other changes as well. I mean, my torch still wraps around with a lanyard, just goes through the top of that loop there, just keeps it on and wraps all the way around there like that. But on the top here I've put a compartment. It just velcros into this back plate here, and inside there I've just got a needle, some thread, you know, like a small repair kit, some brass wire, some 6-twist brass wire. I've also got a small fishing kit as well, so it just makes it a lot more usable, and that can just slide in. In fact, it should go the other way because this back here corresponds with some velcro there, and it just keeps that in place and stops it sliding out. So these are just a few sort of simple changes I've made to these two knives. I think by far the best changes though to make to these ESEE knives, if you are going to get them, is just to grind off the back of the paint on the actual blade and put some gun blue on there. And what the gun blue will do is it will return it to that black finish, but it'll protect it from the elements, a lot like the barrels on a shotgun if they're blued. I mean, I used just some Phillips gun blue gel that I bought off eBay, and you just apply it with a bit of cotton wool and it turns it black. And if you heat up the blade, not to a point where it's going to affect the actual structure of the metal itself, but you leave it on a heater and get the blade nice and hot and put that blue on, that gun blue on, it just makes sure that coating goes in a little deeper and just actually helps you out a bit more for preserving the metal. But the thing that always sort of got me about the ESEEs was, the thing that sort of bugged me about them is I think they're fantastic blades, they really are, and the quality of them and the unconditional lifetime guarantee is just very attractive for them. You can deliberately break them, you can send them back to to ESEE and they'll practically give you new ones, no question asked. I mean, you can't really argue with that. It's a fantastic guarantee. But there's just a few things that probably need doing to them to make them a little bit more functional if you're going to use them as a bushcraft knife, and you're going to scrape ferrocerium rods and put sparks off the blade, because you want the blade to be able to do all kinds of different things and serve you in a number of different circumstances. So by taking a file and just making kind of a semicircle culvert there, it makes it able to evenly scrape the material away off the fire steel, so you don't end up with a flat surface on one side of your fire steel. It just gets taken away as a curve, and if you sort of rotate the steel, it can be a bit more even, and it just preserves it a bit more. It's just like using that particular type of material, a bit more sort of sustainably almost. But taking the metal off, is a good thing to do, in my opinion. But I certainly wouldn't strip the blade down completely. I think the coating is there for a reason, really. 1095 really does pick up rust, and even if you maintain it and look after it, there'll always be occasions where you're using it quite heavily and you're in very damp conditions. I've been out in the absolute pissing rain for 3 days, and water's just streaming down my kit, going onto my knife and stuff, and I have to put my jacket over the top of it. But it's a big blade and water will get everywhere eventually, and by the end of the day, it's got spot rust all over it. So the coating really I would leave on personally. If you are going to take the coating off, I think the best thing to do is to leave it underneath the actual scales, simply because the scales, the micarta material on the scales will absorb water pretty viciously. That's why it's so good, so grippy. Water just goes straight in, and it's a really porous material that doesn't get slippy or anything like rubber. But obviously it'll absorb water, and underneath those scales the rust will begin. So you may want to take precautions if you're going to strip the blade completely, to put something underneath those scales. Maybe even seal the underside of the scales with wax, then pop them on, so you know that the water isn't going to go and make contact with the metal underneath. But these are just a few basic changes I've made to the kit. Kit mentality is always changing all the time. The more you use it, the more you look at it, the more things progress over time, things change, and it's just made these knives a bit more usable for me and given me a complete kit to use with my ESEE 6, just to make it a bit more of a sort of jack of all trades on the side of my hip, instead of, you know, sort of referring to different areas on myself. But this is yeah, just a couple of changes I made I thought I'd share with you. But thanks for watching, and I hope the video's helped out.